He thought his case was closed. 10%. That's all the VA gave him. No explanation, no discussion, just a small number slapped on a big part of his life. And for years, he accepted it. Until one day, during a routine doctor's appointment, something changed. His physician wrote a single sentence in his file. Nothing dramatic, just one clear observation backed by medical language. And somehow, that note cracked the entire case wide open. What happened next didn't just raise his rating. It rewrote his entire VA story. If you're a veteran who feels like your disability rating doesn't reflect what you're really dealing with, this video could change everything. Because the truth is, many veterans are underrated not because they didn't suffer, but because the right words were never documented at the right time. Today, we're going to walk through the real reason this vet's rating jumped, the overlooked mistake that kept him stuck, and the exact kind of medical note that can trigger a massive increase, even years after your original claim. And if you think the VA just gets it right the first time, think again. Stay with me, because the twist in the story isn't just about one man. It's a warning and a lesson for every veteran out there. Let's get into it. When Jake first filed his VA claim, he had no idea what he was walking into. He was fresh out of active duty, dealing with chronic back pain that had slowly crept up over his final 2 years of service. Long deployments, heavy gear, and constant movement had worn him down. But when it came time to get evaluated, he did what a lot of veterans do. He downplayed it, said it wasn't that bad, told the examiner he could still get around, and didn't push back when they asked quick questions during the compensation and pension exam. In less than 20 minutes, they wrote up their report. A few weeks later, he got the envelope. 10%. That was it. To Jake, it didn't feel right, but he also didn't know how the system worked. He assumed maybe that's what everyone gets. Maybe he should just be grateful he got anything. And for years, he let it go. What he didn't realize is that the VA system isn't just about what you say. It's about what's written down. Your words don't carry weight unless they're supported by a doctor's note, clinical terminology, and functional limitations. Jake's initial records barely scratched the surface of his real condition. There was no mention of range of motion loss, no record of flare-ups, and nothing tying his chronic pain to how it impacted his work or daily life. To the VA, it just looked like a mild inconvenience. But that wasn't the full story, and Jake would only realize that after second opinion years later revealed just how much had been missed. Everything started to change the day Jake walked into a new doctor's office, one that actually listened. After years of pushing through the pain, he finally admitted he couldn't ignore it anymore. Mornings had become a battle. He struggled to get out of bed, his back locked up so tightly that even reaching down to tie his boots felt impossible. At work, he couldn't sit or stand for long without discomfort. But more than the physical pain, it was a constant mental exhaustion of pretending he was fine that wore him down. When he met with this new provider, something was different. They didn't rush through the appointment. They asked deeper questions. They noticed a subtle wince when he shifted in the chair, the stiffness in his movement. And instead of brushing it off, they documented everything. Every symptom, every limitation, every word he said, backed by clinical observations and medical language that mattered. That visit led to a detailed evaluation that finally painted the full picture. The doctor noted limited forward flexion, muscle spasms requiring ongoing therapy, and how Jake's symptoms worsened with prolonged standing or repetitive motion. Most importantly, they tied it directly to his service history. No vague language, no assumptions, just clear, objective, documented evidence that Jake had been living with a much more serious condition than the VA had ever acknowledged. And here's the part most veterans don't realize. One single medical note, written the right way, can carry more weight than years of vague records and CNP exams. It wasn't a long report, just a short, clear statement from a licensed medical professional who took the time to listen, observe, and record the truth. That one note would go on to change Jake's entire VA rating. But the system still had more twists ahead. Jake didn't expect much when he filed his supplemental claim. After all, this wasn't his first time dealing with the VA. He'd been through it before. Submit paperwork, wait months, get a denial or a lowball rating with no real explanation. So when he sent in the new medical evidence, He assumed it would end the same way. But just a few weeks later, something unusual happened. His file was flagged for a quality review. At first, that sounded like a bad thing. It felt like his claim had been pulled aside for extra scrutiny, as if he'd done something wrong. But what he didn't realize at the time was that this review would actually work in his favor. Behind the scenes, someone at the VA took a closer look at his old records. They compared the recent doctor's note to his past CNP exams. And that's when the inconsistencies jumped out. His original exam had completely missed key limitations, like the restricted motion, flare-ups, and daily functional loss. It had downplayed his symptoms and lacked any direct link to his service-related injury. In contrast, the new note was clear, clinical, and grounded in real observations. The language used in it matched exactly what the VA looks for in their diagnostic criteria. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't exaggerated. It was just factual, and that's what made it powerful. Because Jake had finally submitted something that checked all the boxes: symptom severity, impact on daily life, and a direct connection to service. It forced the VA to reassess the entire situation, not just the new evidence, but how poorly his initial claim had been handled. Suddenly, this wasn't just a small update. It became a full reevaluation of his rating. And what came next would catch even Jake off guard. The revised decision didn't just bump Jake's rating. It completely transformed it. His original 10% was replaced with a staggering 70% for the same condition. That number meant more than a monthly increase. It opened doors he didn't even know were closed before. Suddenly, he qualified for priority healthcare access, additional dependence compensation, and even vocational rehab benefits. But the most shocking part? The VA backdated the new rating. Because the evidence proved his condition had been that severe all along, they issued retroactive pay that stretched back years. Tens of thousands of dollars he had long given up hope on seeing. Jake said it felt surreal. One moment he was bracing himself for another rejection, and the next he was opening a letter that not only acknowledged his pain, but admitted the system had underestimated for far too long. And the thing that triggered it all? A single, carefully worded note from a private doctor who understood how to describe his condition in VA terms. It wasn't some elaborate legal argument. It was clinical truth, presented in a way the VA could no longer ignore. And while it didn't erase the years of struggle, it validated every bit of it. But what most veterans don't realize is, Jake's story isn't rare. The difference came down to one thing: documentation. That one piece of documentation, clear, specific, and medically backed, was what made all the difference. And here's the part that most veterans never hear. It doesn't have to come from a VA doctor. In Jake's case, the turning point was a nexus letter from a civilian physician, someone who took the time to review his service records, connect the dots, and write a statement explaining in plain language how his condition was at least as likely as not connected to his military service. That single phrase carries enormous weight with the VA. It's the legal threshold for proving service connection. But most vets either don't know to ask for it or think they need some kind of expensive lawyer to get it. Jake's doctor wasn't part of some high-priced legal team. She was a family physician he'd been seeing for years, someone who understood his history and took the time to document it properly. And the letter didn't need to be long. It just needed to be clear, professional, and focused on the facts. She included a brief summary of Jake's condition, his medical history, and how it aligned with his time in the military. That was it. But because it was written with the VA's standards in mind, it carried more weight than anything Jake had submitted before. It wasn't emotional, it wasn't vague, it was undeniable. And that's the key. You don't need a miracle. You just need the right kind of proof. And once that letter was in his file, something unexpected happened. The VA not only reevaluated Jake's condition, they started asking questions. In a good way, they scheduled a new CNP exam, this time with a different examiner, one who actually read the letter before the appointment. During the evaluation, the tone was completely different. Instead of brushing him off or treating him like just another case number, the examiner asked deeper questions. They wanted details. Jake finally felt like someone was listening, and the results showed it. A few weeks later, he got the letter in the mail. His rating had jumped from 10% to 70%. Now, Most veterans don't realize that the VA can revise a rating not just based on worsening symptoms, but based on better documentation. You don't have to wait for your condition to get worse. You just need to prove how serious it already is. That Nexus letter gave Jake the legal foundation to argue that his initial rating had been too low all along. It validated what he had been trying to explain for years. And suddenly, the system that once seemed impossible to move started shifting in his favor. Not because he yelled louder, but because he finally had the right evidence, in the right format, saying exactly what the VA needed to see. And here's where things took another unexpected turn. That one medical note didn't just increase his rating. It unlocked benefits Jake didn't even realize he was eligible for. Once his disability rating jumped to 70%, a whole new world of support became available. Things like increased monthly compensation, access to VA healthcare without copays, and even eligibility for individual unemployability if his condition made working impossible. But beyond financial help, what really changed was Jake's sense of validation. For years, he had been telling people how bad things were. Friends, family, even his doctors. But most just nodded along, not really understanding the toll it took on him. The VA's original rating made him feel like even they didn't believe him, like his pain was invisible on paper, so it didn't count. That new rating, it wasn't just a number. It was the first time a government institution formally acknowledged what Jake had known for years. His condition was real, and it was serious. That recognition changed everything. He no longer felt like he was faking it or exaggerating. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was finally being seen. And that shift in self-worth, it mattered more than the money. Because when you've been fighting for years just to be heard, having someone finally say, "We believe you," can be more powerful than any check. But even after the rating increase, Jake wasn't done learning. What surprised him most was how many other veterans were stuck in the exact same situation. Underrated, overlooked, and misinformed. Once word got out that his rating had jumped from 10% to 70% because of a single overlooked medical note, other vets started reaching out. Some had been sitting on decades of medical records, unsure what was relevant. Others had given up entirely after being denied. Jake realized that what had happened to him wasn't rare. It was a pattern, one rooted in vague language, missing documentation, and a system that often puts the burden of proof on the person who's already hurting. That realization hit him hard, because for every Jake who accidentally finds the right documentation, there are dozens still living with untreated conditions and unfair compensation. That's when he made a decision. He started speaking up, helping other veterans read through their CNP exam notes, encouraging them to request their full claims file, sharing how just one sentence in a medical report completely changed his outcome. He wasn't just helping himself anymore. He was helping others break free from a system that often counts on people not knowing their rights. And for the first time in a long time, Jake didn't just feel like a veteran. He felt like an advocate. Jake's story is a reminder that sometimes it only takes one overlooked detail to change everything. He didn't hire a high-priced attorney or uncover some secret loophole. He just paid attention, asked the right questions, and refused to accept a low rating for a condition that was clearly affecting his life. And that one decision, to read deeper, to speak up, completely shifted his future. So if you've ever felt ignored, underrated, or like your claim doesn't reflect your reality, this isn't where your story ends. Go back, request your records. Look for the words that matter, because they're in there somewhere, and don't let a 10% rating convince you that's all you're worth. You know your truth better than anyone. The system doesn't always get it right the first time, but that doesn't mean you stop fighting. We appreciate you staying with us until the end. If Jake's story resonated with you, or if you've been through something similar, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share one thing you're taking away from this video, or one step you're ready to take next. Your voice matters here, and we read every message. If you found this video helpful, please give a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps us keep making honest, empowering content for veterans like you. Thanks again for being here. We'll see you in the next one.